Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast. We are live on the POSTCAST following the Timberwolves win over the Dallas Mavericks. Marney Gellner of Bally Sports North joins the show to break down the game. The Locked On Wolves postcast starts right now.
You are Locked On Wolves postcast, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. I'm joined by Marney Gellner of Bally Sports North. We're going to break down the Wolves' win over the Mavericks on Monday, the Timberwolves' third consecutive win. And Marney, this was a solid win for Minnesota. We saw a lot more point ant, another strong performance from Naz Reid, who thankfully played after only playing a dozen minutes on Sunday and getting injured, but played really well in this one. And for once, the Wolves' opponents were the ones who really looked like a mess for a lot of the game.
It's nice to have the tables turned like that. I know. And Naz Reid was in the starting lineup again. Yep. Rudy Gobert missed a third consecutive game with the sprained ankle. There's a different kind of energy and enthusiasm and ball movement with this group that's out there now. And I'm hoping it will remain that way as we put pieces back together, as people get healed up and rejoin the lineup. But that is the thing that seems to stick out the most right now, is just the willingness to move the ball and the belief that it will come back to me if I indeed pass it up, and just the opportunities for everyone to touch the basketball. And it's a free-flowing game right now, and the Wolves had really nice wins 25 hours apart. It's been fun.
Yeah, and we'll have some more time to talk about reintegrating guys. Obviously, Rudy Gobert is going to be back, should be back the soonest of any of the players that are missing. But, Jordan McLaughlin, Taurean Prince, it feels like could be at any point in the next couple of weeks, and Towns is probably still 3 to 4 weeks out or so. But, I mean, it's a little reminiscent of last year when the Wolves had, basically half the roster or more. I think at one point all 5 starters out with COVID right around this time of year. It was right around Christmas. Yeah. And they all kind of were reintegrated, and the Wolves won some tough games without them. That game right after Christmas against the Celtics stands out. And then eventually the Wolves went on their strongest run of the year. They were below 500 into early January, but it was that kind of galvanized the group of guys that were maybe fringe rotation players. And ultimately the guys that came back wanted to fit in. And hopefully that's what we see this time around. Now the Wolves have only won 3 in a row. And yes, there's been a couple really good wins mixed in, going back a week, 10 days or so. But, the Wolves will be eager to reintegrate those guys. But this has, talking again about point ant. We talked about this after the game last night on Sunday, that the Wolves ran their offense through Anthony Edwards, and not just told him to stand in the corner and then come off a screen and then go into pick and roll and ball handle. He was actually bringing the ball up the court a lot. He was, even though D'Angelo Russell played and Austin Rivers started, but Ant had the ball in his hands to start so many possessions. And the growth we're seeing from him, the bounce in his step, the smile on his face, the explosive plays. He didn't shoot the ball as well tonight, but he was in control for really the entire game.
He was, and he was only an assist shy of a triple-double. And he went into the fourth quarter needing 2 assists for a triple-double, and he only got 1. And I don't know that he knew until towards the end of the fourth quarter. He didn't act like he knew. He did at the end. Then when Chris Finch finally took him out, he played it up a little bit, and it's fun to have those kind of moments. But the really interesting thing I feel like about this Anthony Edwards, I don't even want to say point guard, we'll say offense initiator, the guy who brings the ball up the court, is that when he would talk about that last year and the year before, he didn't like it. He knew he had to do it sometimes out of necessity, and he would just kind of say that. You're like, yeah, I know the team needs me to do it. It's just not my favorite thing. And then last night in the locker room after the win over the Bulls, someone asked him about point guard, offense initiator, whatever. And he basically was like, yeah, I'm really comfortable. I know I move the ball. I get to see everything. I have a different viewpoint. And then he followed that up unprompted by saying, this is the most fun I've ever had playing basketball. And I just thought, what a massive difference from his first 2 years in the league, where he just didn't care for playing any kind of point guard minutes. He would do them out of necessity, but he didn't embrace it and he didn't enjoy it. And now he's saying it's the most fun he's ever had. And he is loving his time initiating the offense and bringing the ball up the court. It's incredible.
Yeah, there's no doubt that his comfort level is so much greater doing that now. And like you just said, he enjoys doing it. And that is very evident with the way that he's acting and carrying himself on the court. And I think that actually ties into the next thing I want to talk about. The biggest thing for me in this game is that the Wolves were actually, this feels like it was forever ago, they were down 30-21 at the end of the first quarter. The Wolves allowed the Mavericks to get into a bonus early. Luka hit some really tough shots. The Timberwolves were a little bit sloppy on offense. Things kind of seemed like they were teetering a little bit just because it's, the quarter didn't close great. There were some questionable fouls. Luka Garza checked in, committed a couple of quick fouls. The Mavs got up by nearly double digits. But then the second quarter, first it was the bench. It was Jalen Noel. It was Wendell Moore Jr. had some strong minutes. Austin Rivers, and then eventually Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels kind of closed out that second quarter. The Wolves completely took control at that point. It was never really in doubt beyond that. It really wasn't. The final score was 10 points. That was just Travis Bertans making up the threes at the end sort of situation. This was really the Wolves used that 21-5 run in the second quarter. Again, started by the bench, finished by Ant and Jaden McDaniels, and it was like they just had this. They were the team that was more composed. Right when both teams were frustrated with the officiating, right when like things could have gone the other direction, Ant and Jaden McDaniels did just enough defensively, bothered Luka a lot in this game, and it got whatever they wanted really offensively, especially late in that second quarter.
Yeah, it was pretty evident that both teams were frustrated by the officiating, but I thought Jim Peterson pointed it out early in the broadcast and pointed it out well. He said, the officials have dictated what kind of game this is going to be. They've told you right now by all of these whistles, and now you as players need to react. How's it going to be? Are you going to adjust to this? Because they've set the tone. They've set the precedent. Now you know what this game is going to be like. And I think the Wolves maybe did a better job of that. That's not to say they didn't complain about calls and not getting calls. They certainly did, but not to the extent that Dallas did. With Luka got ejected with 2 minutes to go in the third quarter. Steve Nash. Jason Kidd.
Yeah.
My gosh, got ejected as well, right on the heels, and was like had to be separated from the Wolves. Like one of the assistants was kind of doing that where you walk step for step with the coach, so you are between him and the referee. I thought Dallas lost composure, to your point, Ben, in this game. And then I wanted to make sure I mentioned that in the second quarter, the overall score of that second quarter, 36-14. The Wolves held Dallas to a 14-point second quarter. That's sort of where Minnesota got the separation in that quarter and then never really lost it from that point on.
Yeah, and Anthony Edwards picked up a technical too shortly before, I think it was third quarter, shortly before the four technicals total between Luka and Jason Kidd. And Ant was really frustrated, maybe not as demonstrably so as we've seen him before, but he was kind of in Rodney Mott's face, took it to another official to complain, but still kept enough of composure that then allowed the Mavs to be the team that actually unraveled. And that was another kind of, turning point in the game, certainly. I mean, the Wolves went up 20 after all those made technical free throws. Let's talk about our title sponsors of the show, and that is our friends at Turo. Turo is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want wherever you want it from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., the U.K., Canada, and Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from A to B, or test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits in your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. Defensively against Luka Doncic, yes, he was ultimately ejected in this game, but before that point, he wasn't playing particularly well. The Mavs offense in that 14-point second quarter for them was a couple, maybe even three really tough Luka Doncic step back threes that he hit that were contested. But beyond that, I mean, he shot 5 of 17 from the field, committed 4 turnovers in this game. It was primarily Jaden McDaniels' length that really disrupted Luka in my mind. I also thought the Wolves, for once, actually played really strong pick and roll defense in general. Naz Reid was very good defensively, which frankly, I don't think I've said very often on the podcast, but I thought he played the high wall pick and roll coverage very well, and the Wolves communicated defensively. But again, really the defense on Luka to me was the most impressive.
Yeah, there's making him work for shots and getting him frustrated. And you mentioned the 5 for 17. That's a really inefficient night. And he's the second leading scorer in the league, 33 points per game. I think it was 8. I counted it up before, but I think there were only 8 games this season where Luka had scored fewer than 30 points. 30. And so for him to get 19 tonight, I realized he left the game early. He left with 2 minutes to go in the third. If he had gotten to 30 points, it would have been really inefficient and in a lot of shot attempts, because he didn't even get to 20 points in 17 shot attempts. But that's one thing I love about these little mini series where the same teams are going to play with a day in between to kind of not only develop a game plan, but to have a practice and to implement this, and any changes, adjustments, act, counteract, point, counterpoint, however you want to look at it. What will be different than on Wednesday? You assume Jaden McDaniels is going to spend a decent amount of time guarding Luka Doncic. So what does Luka do differently? What do the Mavericks do differently? What did the Wolves have as their second option? All of that is in play when you have these kinds of series like this. And I also think it adds to the rivalry, the tension, the emotion of it. You just had the best player and the head coach ejected from a game in the second half. And then these same two teams in the same arena are going to play again on Wednesday. I love it.
Yeah, and real quickly, a couple things the Wolves did, other things they did well in this game we haven't talked about. The Wolves are actually a +2 on the glass in this game, and Dallas is a top 10 defensive rebounding team. The Wolves, they got 9 offensive rebounds in this game. They kept some balls alive. They were aggressive, and that's something they'll need to do again on Wednesday, is compete on the glass. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on was, I was going to say the bench. I was going to say Jalen Noel and Austin Rivers, but Rivers actually started in this game, played 37 minutes.
Yep.
How about this? I mean, Noel was great, but how about this 3-game run for Austin Rivers, a player who wasn't in the rotation for much of the season, kind of played a bit role at the end of the rotation for the last couple of weeks. And then going back to Friday in Oklahoma City, he had 20 points. He scored 14 points on 7 shots last night against the Bulls. And then tonight, 16 points. He's made over the last 3 games, 11 threes, 3 games combined for Austin Rivers. And he's a solid 3-point shooter for his career, but he's not exactly a sharpshooter. So how big, I mean, this is a massive run for Rivers. The Wolves have won the last 3 games, and Rivers has been a huge part of it.
Yes, and his defense has been really good. His leadership, all of that. A couple of the players were talking about him in the locker room after the game tonight, just on the leader that he is. And I remember Austin on the very first night of the season, the first game the Wolves played, our broadcast crew gets to go to shoot-arounds, the radio and TV broadcast crew, so it's a handful of people, like 4 or 5. And we were sitting there watching morning shoot-around, the morning of the first game of the season. And when the team finishes shoot-around, they all come together around the circle, and then Chris Finch says a couple things, and they huddle up. So Chris Finch said his couple of things, then he said anybody else. And Austin Rivers took like 2 steps forward, and he delivered this really eloquent, inspiring, wonderful, maybe 60-second, 90-second speech. I don't remember, but it struck me because he's new to the squad. I know he's a veteran in the NBA, but he hadn't been here before. He hadn't developed relationships and put his roots down in Minnesota. And all of a sudden, he's the guy speaking in front of this whole team. And I don't even know if he played that night. I don't know if he played 5 minutes in the first 5 games. But here he was giving this speech about, if you want to go where you say you want to go, and if we want this team to be where we want it to be at the end of the season, this is what we do. And it starts now, and that kind of stuff. But it wasn't cliched, rah-rah, like, oh, God, who is this guy blowing smoke? It was genuine and heartfelt, and guys just were like, yeah! Just gathering all around him and celebrating when he was done with his speech, and we all were like, whoa, was Oprah just here? We're inspired. And then he's playing like this now. So I think it's one of those situations where you just really want good things to happen to someone that brings that kind of energy and vibe around a team.
Yeah, and Rivers has been on winning teams, and that's, of course, one of the reasons why, Tim Connolly wanted him in Denver last year, the last couple of years, and why he wanted him in Minnesota this year is because he's played winning basketball. He's played a variety of roles, from being a lead scorer. Way back in the day with the Clippers, he took on a pretty significant scoring role, and then, being more of a point guard at times and being a role player. And he's done kind of all those things with this team so far this year. And I mean, like, he's got that reputation where, guys are going to listen to him. And he was also one of the louder voices 2-3 weeks ago when things were kind of what it felt like, was maybe the lowest point of the season. They were a few games under 500 before some of these injuries started to happen. And Rivers was one of the loudest voices being quoted in the media, just kind of talking about like, hey, we know we're a good team. We're going to get there, kind of reassuring in a way, not overly confident, not overconfident, not cocky, but really more just like, hey, like, we'll get there, more measured. And I think that was probably really important at the time. And now he's speaking with his play as well. Marney, you talked about Wednesday, the same teams go at it. This was, I think both teams were maybe more frustrated with the officiating than they were with each other, but we'll see what kind of, what happens on Wednesday. And we'll see in terms of who's available for the Wolves. I mean, I don't know. Did the team give any update today on Rudy Gobert and how close he was to playing?
Nope, just that Rudy was out again and Kyle Anderson was added. Chris Finch said he found out only about an hour and a half before the game that Anderson would be out because his back has been barking at him again. But no, and as a matter of fact, somebody asked about Jordan McLaughlin and Taurean Prince just to see if there was any update, and Finch just said, no, nothing significant. So that tells me to not expect them next game. Rudy, no update. No update.
Well, same two teams Wednesday, and hopefully Kyle Anderson's back. We'll see. But the Wolves, 3 wins in a row without, no D'Lo Friday, no Rudy the last 3 games, and the Wolves are winning. So hopefully that continues Wednesday. We go live after every Wolves game here at the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube page. Be sure to subscribe to the page. Also subscribe and follow Locked On Wolves on your preferred audio platform. These all get posted on there as well. A big thank you for listening. We'll see you on Wednesday, and we'll catch you next time.